My guest today on Dan's Talks is Rikki Klieman, who is the legal analyst for CBS News and often talks about legal matters. She's an attorney. She was at one time selected as one of the 6 most prominent women attorneys in America by Time magazine. And she has been coming out to Quogue, is it, I think? Since
now Hampton Bays, but originally Quogue for many years.
And I guess we'll ask about the move. And her husband is Bill Bratton, the former police chief of New York, and before that, Los Angeles. Tell us how you first came out to the Hamptons, first of all.
My first real memory of the Hamptons is when I was dating Bill Bratton, and he brought me out for an afternoon. And I think it was early September. It was just after the season had ended, and it was definitely not Tumbleweed Tuesday. So it was probably the following week. And we went and took a drive through West Hampton, Quogue, East Quogue, Hampton Bays, Southampton. At that point, we stopped in Southampton, had a bite to eat at the driver's seat, and walked the beach, went down to Cooper's Beach. It was pretty deserted because it was after the season back in those days, around 1997. And we walked the beach for hours. It was a perfectly beautiful day. And I really understood why people fell in love with the East End.
Why was that? Why is that? And has it changed?
Yes, it has changed. I fell in love, and I'm still in love with the East End, and I will be in love with the East End till I have my last breath. I consider it my home. When people ask me, where do you live? My answer to that is Hampton Bays. We certainly have lived there full time since March 12th, 2020, as many people came out at the time of the pandemic. And we had always gone from 1998 through 2020. We were people who went every weekend, all 4 seasons. And it was the place where I felt, as soon as I passed Stargazer on at exit 70, I felt my blood pressure literally go down. And I was heartbroken during these recent years as Stargazer was in very, very difficult straits.
Now back up and fixed.
It's so fabulous. And I contributed to the GoFundMe site. I felt that Stargazer was so important to being a symbol of getting out to any of the towns in the Hamptons. And what I fell in love with was, if I can describe it as such, it's the rhythm. It's the rhythm of how you feel in an environment in that gorgeous light. It is not a myth to say that there is something called Hamptons Light. It is true. It is those long rays of light that make it so wonderful for photographers and artists. But there's something about it enhances the beauty of everything around it. And so when I walk there, I feel differently. When I breathe the air, I feel differently. And I was a city girl. I grew up in Chicago, lived in New York, then Boston, then New York, then LA, then New York. And I never thought in my lifetime that I would consider a place, particularly other than New York, as my home. And we still do have an apartment in New York, though we gave it up during the pandemic, and through a variety of circumstances, we're able to get it back. But we are there very rarely. We rent that apartment. And my home, which Bill and I own, is where I feel I am most myself.
Tell me what you enjoy most doing when you're out here.
There can be no question that the thing I enjoy most doing is walking. We walked always together, and I also walk myself. And there are a couple of my women friends that I walk with from time to time. But we walk in a different town all the time. So say during a pandemic week, we might walk on Monday in Hampton Bays, on Tuesday in Quogue, on Wednesday in West Hampton, and on Thursday in Southampton. We do walks in all kinds of weather, unless the rain makes it intolerable to walk. And I actually like to walk in the snow unless we're in the middle of gale force winds. But we walk 4 seasons a year. And the beauty of the Hamptons on these walks are really what I think centers me for the course of the day. In addition, as many people will say, what they love about the Hamptons are the beaches. They are extraordinary. And there can be no doubt, if anyone knows our lifestyle, we eat out a lot. And I love the restaurants in the Hamptons. Obviously, we have favorites that we frequent all the time, but there is a feeling of a sense of community if you go back to certain places over and over again. Whether it's, for us, it could be a breakfast, a lunch, and of course, most often a dinner.
When you walk, do you walk everywhere, or do you favor beaches or woodlands or downtowns?
We walk beaches, but during the less tolerable weather, we certainly walk on streets. And one of the things, I can give you an easy example, in our walk in Southampton, which is my favorite walk, we have a short walk and we have a long walk. If we do the long walk, what we will do is we will park the car in front of Sip and Soda. In fact, any walk I do in Southampton, the car is parked in front of Sip and Soda. And I want to go back to Sip and Soda a bit later, since I think it is the town hall. It is the Times Square. It's where all news of the village happens, is at that counter at Sip and Soda, presided over by Mark Parrish, where I learn everything that is happening in the village of Southampton and meet wonderful people. Some are rich, some are poor. Some are white, some are Black, some are Latino, some are Native American. It's a place of quality of people who want to get together and share things at that counter. It's very rare to ever see us in a booth. So we park the car at Sip and Soda. We will walk past the school, go to Little Plains Road. We will walk Little Plains Road all the way to the beach. We will go on the sand, look at that glorious view of the beach. And then we come back and we will walk through Gin Lane, come back all the way around the pond, Agawam Pond, come down First Neck Lane, down to, as it leads you into town, you can eventually get to Job's Lane, and then come to Main Street, go back down and end up at Sip and Soda and have breakfast or lunch, depending on what time of day it is. It is my favorite walk.
Do you wear a tracker to see how many steps you take every day?
Yes, in fact, my tracker is on now. I have a Fitbit. And it's, you know, it's very bossy, that Fitbit, because even though it is not speaking out loud to you, it makes you compete with yourself. If you did 10,000 steps yesterday, you want to do 10,100 today. I track my heartbeat. I track how much exercise I'm doing. So I've become highly addicted to my Fitbit. And one of the things I love the most about it is I really love it when I do the long walk in Southampton. And when When
What
I've
is
done
it
a short
to?
walk, I say, oh, I should have done the long walk.
What do you, does it get up over 20,000 steps a day?
It does not. I'd say my average on a good week is about 14,000 steps.
Right.
And then, lest we think that I live this way all the time, I can look at December of 22 and see what a sloth I was. Whether it was that I was cold or whether it was that we were traveling or had company for the holidays. I mean, I had days where sometimes that Fitbit was at about 2,100 and I hid my head in shame. No, not quite. But it's December was definitely a month that needed a better January, and I'm giving it a better January.
Tell me a little bit about what you're doing in terms of the law that you're involved in at this point, some things you're investigating and being part of for CBS.
My job at CBS News is really the perfect job for me, and particularly at this time in my life. I had anchored at Court TV. So back in those days, obviously, that is not only a 5-day-a-week job, that is often a 7-day-a-week job, because we did trials gavel to gavel. So you could never get away from the live trial. I mean, it was a living, breathing thing. The closest, then, well, let's look at, that's anchoring. Then we have correspondents who are journalists. They go out to wherever the news is happening, whether it's political or whether it's a fire or whether it's a police incident or whatever happens to make the news. In my world, the correspondents who I would interact with the most, because I am an analyst, I stay still. I am either in the New York studio or I'm in my home office talking on television the same way I'm talking to you now on Zoom. And my job is to analyze legal issues. It is not my job to have an opinion about whether someone is guilty or not guilty. It's my job to say, today, these are the issues that happened. And on the one hand, or on the other hand, this is the analysis. So before I get to today, say during the pandemic, the closest I felt to having a 7-day-a-week job again was happened twice. Once was the Trump impeachment hearings occurred while I was living in the Hampton Bays house. And so I had to watch them every minute of every day. And then at breaks, I would occasionally be asked to opine on the evidence that was being produced in the impeachment hearings. During the pandemic, there was also the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And that was the trial of the young man who, during the protests after the George Floyd murder, had gone up to Wisconsin, Kenosha, Wisconsin, and had a long gun and had wound up killing people at that protest. And he was, people may remember, after a long trial, he was in fact acquitted. So that was, again, like a 7-day-a-week job because you had to stay current with the trial. Where I am right this second, as I am talking to you, is I'm covering, but as an analyst, which means I'm in a bit of a hiatus on this case, is Brian Kohlberger, who is the young man who has been accused of murdering the 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho. That case had a lot of intensity during the month of January of 2023, and now is in a hiatus until he has his preliminary hearing in June. It doesn't mean that issues won't come up, but they will come up from time to time. And when that happens, I may get a call to talk about those particular issues. In addition, right now, as we sit here, in the news, certainly are the ongoing investigations concerning former President Donald Trump, which have to do with Mar-a-Lago and the classified documents, have to do with January 6th. Both of those are now in the hands of a special prosecutor, Jack Smith. There is also a Georgia state investigation that's before a grand jury involving allegations of electoral interference. And we still don't know what's happening. So I'm kind of always reading, looking as to what might happen with Letitia James' lawsuit against Donald Trump's family and Donald Trump, having to do with penalties that she is looking for on the civil side. And if in fact any prosecutor would decide to go forward with anything criminal from those cases. Just to make sure we are looking at both sides of an issue, I assume that it could happen that since we do have now a special prosecutor with Mr. Hur, of Joe Biden and his taking of classified documents, that there may be cases involving that, or there may not. So I'm in a position right now of reading lots of news outlets every day, but not commenting on a regular basis unless and until something develops that would fall within my world, which is the purely legal world, not the political world.
How did you get to decide to become a lawyer a long time ago? There were other things you were doing, including acting.
I wanted to be an actress from the time I was a little itty bitty girl. I don't even know where it first began. I probably was 2, 3, or 4 years old. And a person of my age, my favorite TV show was the Mickey Mouse Club, and I wanted to be a Mouseketeer, and it was just in my blood. And I'm a performer at heart, and I like a lot of this, if I can get that, meaning applause. If I had stayed in the theater, I'm sure at this stage of my life, I would probably be on the unemployment line more often than on the stage. In my 20s, when I had gone to New York after being a theater major at Northwestern University, one of the great theater schools in the country, as well as being a great university, an academic institution, I had gone to an audition where there were 200 at least women in line who looked exactly like me. And we were all looking for the same part in the casting of the Godfather movie, of Michael Corleone's wife, Apollonia, in Sicily, who had a few lines to say. And as I listened to all of those women in the line, as the line snaked its way forward, I realized that I might be on that audition line for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And decided not to do that anymore. And I had the good fortune of making a decision to talk to a professor of mine at Northwestern. And I went back to Chicago and I went to see Professor Franklin Heyman, and he was a speech and debate coach. He had taught a pre-constitutional law course. I learned a great deal from him. And I said to him, I've wanted to be an actress all my life. And now I'm 24, 25 years old, and I don't know what to do. And do you have any thoughts? And he said to me, you might think about going to law school. And I responded, well, Professor Heyman, girls don't go to law school. because in those days they did not. And he said to me, no, but women do. And as I have often told the story, with the gratitude that comes from the depths of my soul, Professor Heyman, in those 4 words, changed my whole life. He encouraged me to take the LSAT and to take my performance skills and bring them into the world of litigation. And that's what I did. And I am so grateful that before he died, I found him decades later and thanked him for the profound influence he had on my life.
Well, that's great. My mother was the valedictorian of Brooklyn Law in
Wow.
1936.
Wow, she was truly a pioneer.
And we lived in Montauk, and people used to come out, women used to come out on pilgrimages to her to see
I
her.
bet.
Yeah.
Because even when I went to law school, I entered law school in 1972. And at that time, I think I'm right about this. I think that the percentage of women in law school at that time, now 40 years after your mother, was about 7%.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Today, the percentage of women in law school is over 50%. They have become the majority of students in law school.
Yep. Well, thank you for being on this podcast. I'm interrupting this. We could go on forever with this, I think. I've enjoyed this very much, and we will see each other again soon.
Thank you so much, Dan, for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.